Shit.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, everybody? How's it going? This is Bigger T for the Big C, Bigger T, Big C, Bigger T, Big C, Bigger T podcast. Clint, Big C.
Hey, I'm Clint.
We got another special guest today.
We do have another special guest.
Tell the people who we got.
No, I don't want to tell them.
Yo, you should tell them.
Should I tell them?
You should tell
Ladies
them.
and gentlemen, former University of Arkansas Monticello head football coach, and more importantly, my offensive coordinator at Arkansas Tech University, the guy that looked at me and said, you know what, that guy looks like a third string center.
That's right.
But no, ladies and gentlemen, Greg Riccono, terrific story. Really great conversation. He has a few technical hiccups every now and then, and me and Travis work on filling air.
That's right. Well, and we may edit some of that out. We may not. We'll see how it works.
We're pretty lazy.
We'll see how much my technical abilities work here. So, but anyway, it's an interesting conversation. He had a lot of good things to say. A little more, especially for those of y'all connected with Arkansas Tech, about that great '99 Gulf South Championship year, and just a lot of things about football in general and stuff like that. So, hopefully, you enjoy the conversation. We did.
Yeah.
We enjoyed it.
No, and I don't think he called us fat once.
He didn't call us fat once. So that's good. We got that going for us.
Yeah.
Anyway, enjoy the Big C, Bigger T podcast.
Boom.
Music starts now.
1, 2, 3, 4. You ever seen a lame man walk? Ever heard a dumb man talk? Ever seen a blind man see? I promise you will change his thing. You ever seen a cancer dead? Ever seen all the poor get fed? Ever seen a prisoner set free? I promise you will change his thing. And find a home. Ever seen a weak find the strength? I promise you I'll change it.
Hey, everybody. Hey, how you doing? This is the Big C and Bigger T podcast coming at you live and in living color. We're here today. As always, I got my man, Big C, Clint Clark. Clint, how you doing, buddy?
Man, best day of my life.
Best day.
No, I told Coach, me and Coach were texting earlier. I said it was a Monday. It was definitely a Monday.
Yeah,
it's definitely a Monday.
But
it's all good now.
You got a special guest today, a special guest for all of us, but one that's connected to you.
He is.
Introduce us to our special guest today.
You know, it's weird. I don't think much of my playing time at Arkansas Tech, and neither does Coach Riccono. But
the history books.
I know we have history, but you know what's funny is I texted him and Coach Mullins both, said, "Hey, will you come on my little podcast?" Thinking like they're either going to ignore me or they'll be like, "Just absolutely not."
Who is this?
Not going to happen. But they both said, but surprisingly enough, they both said yes immediately, which means I must have done something right in 4 years. So, ladies and gentlemen, former office coordinator at Arkansas Tech University. He's got a whole bunch of other stuff on his record, on his resume, but I consider him a good friend, Coach Greg Riccono.
Well, Clint, I appreciate that. And before we get into the stories and the funny stories, I do want to say something about Clint as an individual. You know, we had a number of kids that came through the Arkansas Tech program. And a lot of them have done some wonderful things with their lives. I'm very proud to have been a part of that. But I'll tell you this, rare is that you find a ball player that sticks with it and goes through all the pain and the agony. And quite honestly, he was an offensive lineman, so he didn't get very many joys and rewards. But I think he came out the back end really taking everything out of football that he could possibly get from it. And I'm proud to see where he's gone with his life.
Hey,
yeah, thanks,
he's
Coach.
a glutton for punishment.
Yeah, that's it.
And he learns from the punishment. It's amazing.
That's right. That's right.
Clint is a
And
good-
I'm sure there was some things that went on in that dorm I don't want to know about, but
Yeah.
that's a whole different animal.
And Coach, I'm not surprised y'all responded so quick because he's a memorable fella.
He is that. Well, as a matter of fact, my wife and I met, Clint, you'll appreciate this year, in 1999.
Oh, wow. It's a good year. Vintage.
Yeah, well, and you know, being a football coach, I made her endure the entire football season through two-a-days, we hit it off right away, through two-a-days, through recruiting, through spring football, through the 5:30 a.m. workouts in the spring, before I'd consider to marry her, because I wanted her to make sure she knew what a coach's life really was.
Yeah. There you go. That's good thinking, Coach. Don't want to surprise her with that for sure.
Now, I was telling Travis before we came on the podcast, I remember the first words Coach Riccono ever said to me.
I'm dying to know. I'm sitting on pins and needles. What were the first words I ever said?
The first word you ever said, we had a team meeting and you had said something to us about not going out and getting drunk. And I think I told you this because I was looking for a home and I was using you as my real estate agent. I didn't end up buying anything. I wasted a bunch of your time.
No, not at all.
So you walked up to me and because I said, Coach, I don't even drink. And so you walked up to me and you thumped me on the stomach and goes, good. You don't want that thing swelling up. And I was just like, I'm like, it's so good. Like, it's so good. Like, I wasn't even mad. I wasn't even mad. And
well, Coach, first of all, just tell us a little bit about how you got into football, how you got into coaching, all that kind of stuff. Did you play and all that?
Yeah, I did. As a matter of fact, I grew up in a football family. My dad was a high school football coach for the first, I want to say 14 years of my life, I believe. My uncle was a college football coach. So it was only natural for us. We played the game. My brother, I had an older brother that was 10 times better than I was. I mean, he was just a natural football player. And we ended up going to a very small high school north of Kansas City, Missouri. And when I say very small, my senior year, we had 12 starters on both sides of the ball. One guy came in for defense and one guy left.
Wow.
So, yeah, when I went to college and they told me what side of the ball you want to play, I'm like, huh? I mean, coming off the field didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
So we grew up in a sports family. My dad also played minor league baseball. So, you know, it was something that was just ingrained in all of us. Now, I'll tell you this, and this is a big deal to me. He never once forced us to play. You know, he would have been just as happy. I was also, Clint won't know this, I was an All-American trumpet player. And he was more proud of me for that than anything I ever did on the sports field.
oh yeah, you can, yeah, definitely. Because I mean, that's not something that a talent y'all share. So I mean, seeing something unique about yourself's got to be just awesome for the dad. Now, what positions did you play in high school, and then in college, what position did you play?
Well, I was the quarterback playing running back in high school. This is the God's honest truth. Whenever we threw a pass, the quarterback would turn around and pitch it to me. And then I threw all the passes.
Okay.
He couldn't play running back. He didn't have that kind of skill. But I was a running back. And then when I went to college, I started out on the defensive side of the ball and played cornerback for 2 years and then played quarterback my last 2 years.
Where'd you go to college?
You'll never heard of it. It was called Tarkio College. It was a NAI school up in the northwest corner of Missouri. Okay. And I made the class, and whenever I recruited, I tried to instill this in kids. I made the classic mistake of going to the highest bidder. Yeah. And that it was, I didn't look at the program. I didn't look at the school. I didn't pay any attention to the facilities. And man, when I got there, I had known I'd made a mistake. But you guys, my dad said, nope, you signed with him, you're staying. So, and I'm thankful they did it because I got to coach early. They moved me right into a position coach, and then I coached 2 seasons there. Invaluable experience for a young guy.
Oh yeah, for sure. So how did you get into coaching? Where did you start out your coaching career?
Well, I started there at Tarkio where I played. And then, I had caught the college bug because that's all I really knew. So I had been offered some, and if I'm looking back now, I've been offered some really good position jobs at some nice schools. When I got done at my undergraduate school, I started looking for graduate assistant jobs, and I had contacts all over the place through my uncle. And it was really difficult to get a position at that time because you had a lot of high school coaches, quite honestly, that were selling their talent to get into these big Division I programs.
Right.
I actually lost a graduate assistant job to Emmett Smith's high school coach. So it was just the nature of the business. But I ended up getting an offer to go graduate assistant at Northwest Missouri State, which is a really solid Division II school in the northwest corner of Missouri. So that's where Mullins and I hooked up. I was able to join that staff. It was a new staff, taking over a struggling program. And that's really, as a young coach, that's what you want. You want to see it from bottom to top, as opposed to going someplace that's already established. You're not going to learn as much. So I got a lot of experience there. And from there, I got my master's degree, and it was time to be a grown-up, but I didn't listen to anybody. I kept looking for that great job, ended up leaving Missouri and going and coaching a minor league football team in Colorado Springs. And by minor league, I meant real minor, because the players got $100 a game. They got room and board, but they also were assigned jobs. So we had guys working all over Colorado Springs in like Walmart and all of those types of things. As a matter of fact, I was the offensive coordinator, and my job for 5 days was the head maintenance man at McDonald's.
Wow.
Yeah, I didn't even own a screwdriver.
You could fix a fryer like nobody could.
I said 5 days.
Ice cream to show you, no, can you?
I said 5 days, and that's how long I lasted. The general manager of the team quit, and the head football coach, who again I had known for 5 days, went to the ownership, and he said, "If you don't make him general manager, I quit." So I moved in, 25 years old. I moved into the general manager job of a minor league football team.
Wow.
So it was tremendous experience. Of course, as you would predict, the league folded. We had a pretty quality team, but it did fall apart. And then I took the offensive coordinator job at a little NAIA school in central Missouri called Missouri Valley College, and was there for 3 years. And it is a really solid school with a lot of football tradition. Matter of fact, my dad played there. So I enjoyed my time there, and we had some outstanding football teams. From there, I took the head coaching job at Iowa Wesleyan College, which is in Southeast Iowa, again, an NAIA school. Enjoyed my time there. It was really strapped financially. The school didn't have a lot of money, so it made it difficult. Now, understand, through all of these travels, there's very few coaches off that Northwest Missouri staff that I'd stayed in touch with. Steve Mullins was one of them. And I just, when I worked with Steve, he was the offensive coordinator at Northwest Missouri, and I was a graduate assistant. So you can envision he was a bit of a pedestal guy. I liked the way he did things. I liked the way he treated players. I liked the way he interacted with other coaches. So we had stayed in touch. And when he got the offer at Arkansas Tech, Steve calls me. I come down to Arkansas to look at it. I'll be honest with you, I never stepped foot in the state of Arkansas prior to that.
Lucky.
Yeah, I know. I disagree. And I drove around the campus, and at that time, Clint, it was pretty distressed in itself.
Yeah.
The facilities were terrible.
Was this in July when he first came?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, in July, and we're staring August and straight in the face. Wow. So anyway, I drove around, took a look at it, met with Steve. That was all wonderful. I'm going to be here. Had to resign from my job in Iowa, which was tough because, again, it was late notice. But then when we got down here, I'm telling you, and I'm not going to mention any names, we sat in the first staff meeting. There were 2 coaches from the previous staff. They told us we had all Americans at every position, and this was just going to be a cakewalk. And oh boy, after that first practice, Clint, no offense, but I looked at Steve and I said, we've been sold a bill of goods.
Yeah, no, we weren't in shape. I remember, and I told this story, and Reverend Johnson, please forgive me. But I was talking to Jumbo and I said, I remember you were on the phone, I think, with Coach Mullins. And I never was a drinker because I just don't like the taste of it. But I remember Jumbo finishing his beer and smashing the can going, yeah, I'm in shape. I mean, I don't know if he's on the phone with Coach Mullins, but for the story, it needs to be.
It sounds good. But I'll tell you, Clint can attest to this. And, you know, I still was a little bit young, inexperienced. I'd been around a little bit, but mostly on my own. Okay. Mostly learning from myself, which is not the best way. I watched Steve break down that team like a double barrel shotgun. I mean, he did. He broke them down. He got them in shape. It was tough. They benefited from it, but it was a very, Clint, do you remember the time he sent everybody off the practice field, made us start all over again?
Yeah, it happened a few times where we,
sure did. And again, you mentioned the name earlier, and I'm not going to mention it again. We had a little drill, Travis, that we ran prior to practice. It was called tires, and it was a foot agility drill plus a man maker. And it was so bad that he had one of the biggest, baddest offensive linemen on our team in tears. I mean, he just was that ruthless with them that first year. And subsequently, we got better in a hurry.
Yeah.
We struggled a little bit that first year. I think we were 4-7, if I'm not mistaken. But we're competitive, excuse me. And, you know, it built from there. And I noticed on the last podcast, I saw Clint flashing that ring. That was the ultimate destination for that group of kids that stuck with it.
Yeah.
Well, and it was, you know, and I'd always thought about it from your point of view, you know, but I mean, the fact is you get there, you know, Todd Cooley's your incoming quarterback.
Yep.
Who I think was all conference.
He had a lot of big games. I'm not sure he was, but
he was your established starter.
Oh, absolutely.
He's one of them. You're like, okay, you can run but now you have to come in, you know, and you have to scrap the offense.
Let me tell you,
because Hollingsworth ran pretty much a run and shoot, which was odd to me because, as we discussed on the last podcast, I ran the dead T in high school.
Right.
Her pass play was a draw. A tight end dump was about the extent of her pass tree. So you get the drift. But
here's the story you may not know, Clint.
You ran more of a pro style offense.
Pro style, yes. The first ball game we go play, and I don't know if you remember this. I mean, absolute first ball game in green and gold. We go play is a neutral game, Northeast Oklahoma in Alma.
At Alma.
Yeah. And Cooley is the starting quarterback. Todd is a fine football mind. He is. You know, he can be a little full of it, but he is a fine football mind. He's the head coach at Delta State right now. And we went out there and we had taught this offense for 3 weeks and thought we had a pretty good handle on it. In the first quarter, I'm not kidding you, Todd Cooley audibled about every other play. And I mean, just ticked Steve Mullins off. I mean, it was just a battle because here he was was an incoming senior and had success. Right. And, you know, to bend to our program, it was difficult for him. And looking back at it now, I get that, but I'm sure it was that way for all of you guys.
Well, it was definitely a different experience, for sure. Because you just, you know, and I don't know if you remember, I had knee surgery that summer, so I didn't.
I do. Yeah.
So,
I do.
Which Coach, I thank the good Lord every day because that walk through practice, which everybody says is the hardest thing they've ever done in their entire life. I think it's because Mullins just snapped.
Yeah.
I think he's like, really, this is the walkthrough. But I remember the next year, going into that y'all's second year. You said it at the office meeting because we're gonna have a walkthrough practice tomorrow, and we all just went, There was like an audible groan. He goes, "No, guys, a real walkthrough," because you knew we weren't going to embarrass ourselves But I do remember yelling at a kid that stopped in tires because I'm like, you better not.
And that's what happens. And that's what happens. You end up getting the leadership brings the rest of them along. And, it did. There was a great transformation in those first 2 years. And it didn't really reflect in the record. I think the second year we were at 500. But it was all part of where that group was going. And just some great young men. Geez, I tell you what, I have some of my fondest memories of 21 years of coaching were on that field, mostly on the game field. Practice field had some funny moments, but but overall, it was a good experience.
I do have, and I did tell you I had another like personal story, me and you interaction, and you probably won't even remember this because it was. So let's just be honest. If I was in the game, it was well in hand. The outcome was no longer in doubt. I think we can agree on that point.
You got a better memory of that than I do.
Oh, wait, well, that's what happened. So, I told him on this podcast, I had trouble with consistency. Like I'd look good for 3 plays, then I'd snap the ball over the quarterback's head and we'd fumble the snap. I always had issues with the consistency. It is what it is. So I was in the game, and I think Savoy was in there, and you go, look, be really careful. I don't really trust this guy with the snap. And you just kind of give me a look, and you just roll your eyes. I'm just like,
that's negative coaching. I can't believe I did that.
Well, it wasn't unwarranted. But it's just like your quarterback. Like, hey, just be careful. I have no idea where this guy's going to.
Sometimes the truth hurts.
Yeah,
exactly. Well, you had Shane standing behind you. That was no guarantee either.
Well, he saved me more than once because there was the spring game. There was actually the 99 spring game where the 2s were playing the 1s.
Okay. And
it was actually, my memory's good. We were driving down the field, and we were in field goal range to beat the 1s. Which would have been a huge deal for the backups to beat the starters. But
sure.
we were being competitive with them, but that was the type of competitiveness and toughness that y'all had built in us.
Well, and it definitely carried over into the following season because I know you remember this. You talk about depth, 1s against 2s. We go into that season knowing Travis Horn is the guy. I mean, right. He's going to carry us to the promised land. He got hurt. And then Ed Duncan had to come in. And Ed Duncan, who was a tremendous athlete out of Morrilton, but was running number 2. And Ed ended up being co-offensive player of the year in the Gulf South Conference.
With a man that you had something to do with, which was Josh Price.
Oh, good Lord. I'll tell you this. And people ask me all the time, what was it? Because Price still holds a lot of records at Tech.
Yeah.
Ask me what it was like to coach Josh Price. And I say this, take a handful of raw coffee and chew on it. Because that's how hyper that guy is. And I mean, yeah, you get him in the field, he's calm as can be. But any other time, man, he was just as wound up as he could possibly be. But what a competitor. I mean, he's still coach.
Yeah. Well, we froze up again. So
this break, Clint, is brought to you by.
Oh, and he's back.
Oh, there you are.
Commercial.
I was trying to hear what you guys were saying about me.
We were talking magic. But George Hart, Division I transfer from San Jose State.
Sure.
He comes in. He's the guy. The prior season, Chris Taylor, who played quarterback at Atkins, which I'm 0-3 against, much like Jumbo, and I hate them for it.
So they had some good teams back then.
Yeah, I mean, well, it was like Atkins, Greenbrier, and Dover, right. Which I hate to give. Lawson will get a kick out of that I said Dover was good football, but but you had Chris Taylor. He played quarterback the prior season, and Chris was playing tight end and punting the year before, so he kind of went there out of need because he's a selfless guy.
That's
he
exactly
tight end, punter, fullback, quarterback,
whatever you need.
I mean, he was that was the type of guy. But y'all bring in this transfer, and then, like Mullen said, he thought it was a great play. He thought it was a great gimmick play, the throwback to Hart.
Yeah, that was tragic, to be honest with you. It really was. And George, God love it. And it's funny you should mention that, because I talked to George about 2 months ago. And he's doing great. Yeah, what a wonderful fella. But yes, we called that quarterback, or I called that quarterback cutback, or excuse me, throwback. And George was taught, and he'll tell you this: you catch it on the flare, and then you run out of bounds. You don't try to make any moves out there. Well,
Right.
George was an instinctive, competitive athlete. He got over that sideline, he tried to cut back, and they blew his knee out just like that. So yeah, it was tough. It really was. And that's game 3 of the season.
Right.
So there's your starter. Price is in red shirt. So we didn't want to burn his. So we had a heck of a quandary on our hands.
Well, and that was at Delta State,
Mhm.
which was the best pregame meal we'd ever had, by the way.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
We still talk about, when the guys get together, we talk about that breakfast at Delta State.
I'm telling you.
It was just this old African American family that had a spot, and I think Cooley found it.
By
And
accident.
it was just like me and Riccono are both like, yes, I remember.
Yes.
I don't know why. I know why we haven't went back to Cleveland, Mississippi, but I wouldn't.
Anybody that's
try to
ever
find
been
that
there
place.
knows why you haven't been back to Cleveland, Mississippi.
Yeah, everybody's been to Cleveland. So, like, I get it.
Yeah.
The food was probably good, but it ain't that good. But no, that game was like a snake bit game for us.
It was.
Chris Taylor, who we talked about, started having back spasms before the game. Danny Albright, starting right tackle, gets a concussion.
Mhm.
You're playing a true freshman at right tackle all of a sudden.
Right.
And then George blows his knee out. And I think me and you talked about it whenever we were at, whenever you're showing me around at houses and stuff.
Right.
That they would not tell you how bad George was hurt.
Oh, it's horrible. It really was, because again, we've got Josh is there. He's dressed, but we sure don't want to burn his red shirt if George is okay.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to put another young man out there who, Shane, as a matter of fact, who had not prepared for the position. That was my fault. Shane wasn't ready to go out there, and bless his heart, he was playing against a very good defense, and he wasn't able to get anything done. So we ended up losing that ball game 10-7. So we're sitting in week 3. We'd already lost the first game to the defending national champion, Northwest Missouri State, won the second one, and then lost to Delta 10-7 in just a very disgusting night. We're in a quandary. We don't know what's going to happen. And Coach Mullins and I had meetings and meetings and meetings, and we did. We changed the entire offense in 1 week. I mean, we did. We went to a split back look. We started using some motions out of the backfield. We opened the game up because we didn't have the quarterback. I felt like that we could go out there and put the game on him. We had to develop a running game around him to keep the pressure off of him. Now, it turned out that I was wrong about Josh. He was ready.
Yeah.
And when I mentioned Ed was the offensive player of the year, Josh was the other as a redshirt sophomore. So anyway, and then Clint, we rattled off 9 wins.
Yeah.
And just really had a good run of it. By the time we got to the national playoffs, we were limping in there. We were pretty beat up.
Yeah.
And boy, I tell you what, coming back on that flight, I looked through that plane, and I mean, if we'd have had to play the next week, the coaches would have had to play, because we were so beat up at that point. But what a fantastic year. Won the Gulf South Championship, and if I'm not mistaken, that's the only time Arkansas Tech ever won it.
Yeah. It is. And we were the first Arkansas team to ever win it outright.
That's right.
Our first ones. Southern Arkansas had shared it before.
Oh, wasn't that a
man,
fun
we
game?
had to go. And our offense got to be where it was really salty.
Yeah.
Towards the end of the year, I mean, we had some good players, even against Carson Newman, which had an NFL talent on the defensive line.
No question.
Cedric Killings, I believe, is his name.
Yes.
That he played years in the NFL. He's probably drawing a pension from the NFL right now.
Right.
Which is the dream. But so, I mean, that's the type of talent we're playing against. And we hung up 30-something points on them.
Oh, we did. And of course, one of our favorite people, I know he's yours, is Lance Strother.
Oh, I love
And
it.
I do too. What a guy. And, here's a kid that on a good day running downhill might hit 4.7. He's not a speedy wide receiver by any stretch of the imagination, but that year alone, I don't know why this number sticks in my head. He had 71 receptions. And, you're playing against Carson Newman, and he beats two of their kids that really they weren't pro caliber, but they were better than anything we'd seen in the Gulf South. So, we had kids like that. Travis Horn came back and played very well. Yeah. We had kids that were contributing that maybe you didn't think before the season could. And I think that goes back again to the style of leadership that Mullins gave those players. They were willing to accept the responsibility of their teammates. And it really showed. It was a fun year.
Now, when you first got to Tech, it was on like you said, you came in short. How much input did you have in the offense? As far as
not much at all. There was I'll be honest with you, this was Steve Mullins' first head coaching job. And, he was coming from Northwestern State, Louisiana. I thought it was going to be one way. He wasn't comfortable with it being that way. I had enough respect for him. He's the boss. So we did it that way, which was, again, you mentioned it earlier, more of a pro style, eye-oriented offense. And, I was coming from a program where, again, I had been wide open and we were a lot more multiple. You guys may not be old enough to remember the 49er offense. It was based on that Bill Walsh 49er offense. Right. West Coast. Yeah.
Timing routes.
So not much, Clint. That first year I had very little input, other than, whatever Steve needed me to do in the box.
Okay. Now you went to UAM from Tech, correct?
Yeah. Well, I made better decisions in my life. And it's
at some point we all have an itch.
Yeah.
And we got to scratch it. For me, I wanted to open up my own jiu-jitsu school. I'm like, I want to do it. I'm going to do it. And I got talked out of signing a lease in a lot of different places by my mentor, Danny Dring, who we've had on the podcast before. And it was the best thing. And I listened to him. I never got myself in trouble, but I wanted to try it. I tried it. I'm like, I hate this. I'm going to go back to my gym and I will substitute teach. So I had my own jiu-jitsu school for like 6 months, and that was 6 months probably too long. But now I know I didn't like it.
Well, I heard Steve, and of course, Steve, UAM, that's a whole sick relationship in itself.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, when you drove around Arkansas, you didn't drive to UAM. I mean, it is the ugliest. It was one of the worst campuses. It
is. I went down there, and I was Clint. I was ready. I was ready to do my own thing. Had been a head coach before. We had, I would consider, unparalleled success at Tech, given what we had come into.
Oh, yeah.
And the program was established. And I really felt like we'd accomplished something. I'm going to go do it somewhere else. So I went down there, came back, offered the job is an understatement. The fact that I was there told me I had the job. And I come back, the first thing, the man loves UAM like nobody in the world. And the first thing out of Coach Mullins' mouth is, don't do it, Greg. You'll be sorry. And you know what? He was right. They had absolutely no facilities. And this is the truth. When I got there in April, they had 17 kids on the team. 17 kids. I'm not talking about 17 good kids. I'm talking about period.
Yeah.
So, I just really went down there on my ego, and that was a mistake. Now my last season down there, we finished 6-5, which is like winning the Super Bowl down there. Had an outstanding quarterback who I didn't even recruit. The previous coach had recruited him. A little kid out of California that was 5'10", maybe 170 pounds. Most non-traditional football player ever. And for a 500 football team was 2-time Gulf South Player of the Year. So, I mean, you got all the Valdostas and the Central Arkansas and the North Alabamas, and here's this kid from 500 UAM. Both seasons he played was the offensive player of the year. So he was phenomenal. And Corey Allred was his name. And the best thing I ever did was I looked at the coaching staff in the first spring game and I said, we're not going to coach him. And the coaches are like, look at me like, what are you talking about? That kid is a backyard football player, and I'm going to let him play backyard football. And that's what he did for 2 seasons. So
that's awesome.
Sometimes the best coaching is not coaching.
Yeah.
Now, Coach, earlier you told us that you were a trumpet player. Right?
Yes.
So I gotta
I'm
ask.
planning on you bringing that back up.
Well, I gotta ask.
I ducked out at the right time.
I live in South Arkansas, and I know a couple connections to UAM. Did you enjoy Gary Meggs' music while you were there?
I think he froze up, but I think this time it was on purpose because he didn't want to talk about the trumpet. I think that's what it is. Now one time
is brought to you by Mattress Topper, Egg Crate Mattress Toppers.
See, I didn't know if we were gonna go that for the 3-in-1 body wash.
No, let's go with the Egg Crate Mattress Topper.
No, I mean it's a solid choice.
When your bed is not exactly where it needs to be, giving you that good night's sleep, forget about sleep studies. Forget about all those other things. Forget about melatonin or Ambien.
Whatever.
Go to Dollar General or Family Dollar and pick you up an Egg Crate mattress topper.
Are you thinking about dropping an anvil on your head? The way you go to sleep.
Have a Egg Crate mattress topper will protect you for the anvil.
And if you wake up sweaty from the egg top mattress cover,
in case of a tornado, take the Egg Crate mattress topper off your mattress, wrap yourself in it, get in your bathtub, protected from tornadoes.
Yeah. And while you're in the bathtub, use your 3-in-1 body wash.
That's right.
If you get busy, you don't have time.
Who wants to buy 3 bottles?
3 bottles when you can buy 1.
And who has the shelf space in their shower?
I don't.
3 bottles.
If you're husky and you've got to turn around in the shower.
That's right.
I wonder if he's coming back this time, Travis.
I don't know. I
don't know. This is the longest he's been gone. It's usually like right back home.
Sports podcast. This guy's talking music. So, Coach, when you were at UAM, and since you have a history of playing the trumpet, did you ever get to know Gary Meggs or listen to him?
I did know Gary, and I did listen to him. Now you're talking about 2 light years apart in terms of what, how long it had been since I played. Yeah. But he was very talented, I'm telling you.
Yeah, he his band had I had a former I was a youth pastor in Camden, and one of my former students was in his band and played trumpet actually.
Yeah, when I boast about being an All-American, that was a long time ago, and there's some awfully talented people out there now that weren't around there then. So it was a good experience though, because it was totally away from the entire athletic persona. I had a choice when I went into college, is either go athletics or go music. Obviously I went athletics. And I enjoyed those things, traveled with the McDonald's All-American band, and that's, you can't replace that kind of experience.
No.
So high school, I do remember Gary. Go ahead.
In high school, Clinton and I hated the band.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Well, he didn't hate it as bad as I did.
I hated it.
Well, he dated a girl that was in the band, so I knew it was that. But pretty much. But our band, the stand where the bands were in were separate, and it was actually closer to the field, and it was at the 30-yard line. Like where we can walk to, right?
All right.
Into the field there, and kind of in front of the stands. So they would be kicking up right next to us, in timeouts. Our coach was trying to tell us something. We couldn't hear nothing because the dang trombone's blowing in our ears.
Oh, Lord.
So we couldn't stand the band in high school because I'm like, We're here for football, not for you people.
Oh, I tell you, you see that at a lot of schools, man. I tell you, these bands have taken on a life of their own.
Oh, no, they
Uh,
have. I mean,
Well,
You know,
then
Russellville.
I became a youth pastor, and as a youth pastor, you got kids that are into all kinds of things,
Sure.
and I had some kids that were real into band. So all of a sudden I'm going to band contests and I'm seeing, okay, maybe there's a little more to this band than I thought there was in high school.
Oh, there's other walks of life, and that's what, as athletes, that's what's so hard for us to see.
Yeah.
You haven't asked me about it, but I'll say it anyway. When I got out of coaching, I illustrated that I came from a football family.
Mm-hmm.
So, my entire life, Friday nights, I'm talking about from the time I was born, Friday nights were high school football games.
Yeah.
Whether you're playing or whether your dad's coaching.
Yeah.
And then, straight from there into college, when I got out of football, I didn't know what people did in the fall on the weekends.
Yeah.
I didn't have any idea. It didn't even occur to me there was something outside of that realm.
Right.
So you discover these things as you get older, and Travis, you have, and I know Clint has too, that, there's a world outside of football.
Yeah, for sure.
oh yeah, for sure.
Now, you being the offensive guy, you said now before you got to Tech that you ran some wide open, the West Coast style
Right.
offense, and then
Right.
at Tech you ran the pro style I form mostly.
That changed.
It did.
Yeah, it did change. As a matter of fact, and again, this just distributes Steve Mullins as a good manager. He saw our personnel changing as we started to recruit, and the kids that Division II is a little different. Division I, you go out and you get who you want.
Yeah.
Because I say Division
puzzle
I,
piece.
upper division. Arkansas. That's right. Arkansas has a prototype of what they're looking for. More so even Alabama has a prototype of what they're looking for. Division II, you're looking for a guy that's an athlete that will compete and will learn. So it's a little bit different deal. But as our personnel started to change, Coach Mullins knew that we had to change a little bit about what we were doing. And, for that fact, we traveled around, visit with some staffs. I was lucky enough to take my offensive staff to visit with some universities. And we brought some good ideas back in here. And I felt like we evolved over a period of time.
So what do you think of the way offense have evolved since then? Because I know you got out of coaching. Now you see it's a little more the RPO,
Right.
the hurry up, no huddle, Gus Malzahn. And of course, everybody gives him credit, but there was other people. And of course, a lot of what Gus Malzahn does is single wing stuff added to the spread.
That's right. Well, I tell you, the guy, and I haven't talked to him in years, the guy that changed football in Arkansas was Barry Lunny Sr.
Yeah.
Over at Southside. And when I talked about earlier, when I got down here in 97, it was 3 yards in a cloud of dust across the state. Everybody was doing the same thing. And I was lucky enough to change recruiting areas after that first year and got over on the west side of the state. And when I did, I saw what they were doing at Southside, and I thought, this is going to change things. And it did. Now, you asked me about the state of football. Now, I think you can take it too far. I really do. I think we have gotten away from a lot of the physical aspects of football, and you see teams struggle with that when they have to have it. That's not something you can turn on and off. The finesse is you can turn finesse off and on because it's a soft emotion. But as far as just the getting down in the dirt grit, you can't do that unless it's in you. So I think we have seen it go just a little bit too far to the wide open side, and I think you'll see it swing back the other way.
And don't you think we are seeing that a little bit? We are seeing some of it swing back.
Yes. I want to say it was 2 or 3 years ago, you saw the best 2 teams in the country were obviously LSU and Alabama. And if you watch that ball game, that was the most physical football game I've seen in years. And, you're starting to see, of course, we've said it for 1,000 years, defenses win championships, and they do. But also that physical in your face football also can dominate a championship. So I think again, yes, I see more of it now than I did probably 5 or 6 years ago. I don't think it'll ever go back to what it was.
Yeah.
Because people are too creative, coaches want to coach too much. So that that's just too boring for a coach nowadays.
Now, you did at Arkansas Tech, you found yourself in both a tough and enviable, it's like a hard position, but it's a good position to be in. Because like you said, Josh Price became Gulf South Conference Player of the Year.
Yeah.
But you also had Division I George Harp.
Yeah.
That, lost the job to injury.
And
I don't want to ask, but how hard of a situation is that to be in as an offensive coordinator, quarterback coach? You don't have to talk any more about it than you want to.
No, that's fine. And I think both players know this. I think the world of both of them. I really do. I mean, they both bring different things to the table, which all athletes do. George was your prototypical California quarterback. I mean, he could stand back there and he could throw BBs through tires. I mean, he just was very talented and smart, tremendous young man. However, Josh Price might be the most competitive human being I've ever met in my life. Not winning doesn't ever occur to him. So yes, when Josh took over to injury, and you may not remember this, Clint, when Josh took over due to injury, he wins 9 in a row, wins us a Gulf South championship, takes us to the playoffs. It's kind of hard to set that guy down.
Yeah.
That didn't mean that the job wasn't always wide open. We went that next year and played. You graduated in 99, didn't you?
I graduated 90, yeah.
Okay, the next year you wouldn't have been there. We went down and we played UAM. And at that time, UAM was running this crazy defense where they danced all over the field and you just couldn't even hardly.
Yeah, line up wherever. They ran that the year. They ran that the year before.
That John Thompson
type, like just line up wherever.
Exactly. On John Thompson stuff on steroids, Travis. It was terrible. So it made it very difficult. But told you that to tell you this. We ended up having to run, and we weren't an option team. Because of what they were doing, they didn't have anybody assigned to the quarterback on option. So we had to run a lot of option in that UAM game. And Price, on a lucky day, could bust a 5-3 out. I mean, he could not run me right now. And he took a beating in that game. So George had to come into that game, and George won that game for us because Josh was so beat up. So that's the kind of selflessness that you find in football that I don't think you find in other sports. So it was difficult. I think we all had a good relationship. I think we all understood what we needed to do to get the job done. And George has even told me he had a great time at Arkansas Tech.
He played baseball too after that year, didn't he?
He did. He played baseball and did very well.
Yeah.
He's just a good young man. And subsequently, I don't know if you know this, Clint, he's married, he's got 3 daughters. Just loving life in California. He's doing very well.
Great. No, George is one of the guys I haven't caught up with. I keep up with a lot of the guys. A lot of the guys were asking me when we're going to have you on after we had Mullins on. I was like, I do need to reach out to him. I think I got his number.
Well, I appreciate you doing it.
So, yeah. Now, on the recruiting thing, kind of, what does it take? Did Mullins kind of let you recruit the quarterback and pick which quarterbacks you want to go after?
No, he didn't.
You just have territories, and what went into recruiting quarterbacks?
Well, we had territories, and it's funny because when we got here in 97, it was a 4-man staff. There were 2 coaches on defense, and there was the head coach and myself, and that was it. Right. We had 2 graduate assistants that weren't allowed to recruit. Mm-hmm. So after that first season, we lost that defensive coordinator. So we had 2 position coaches, and that was myself and Billy Goss. I know you remember Coach Goss.
Yeah. And Coach Goss eventually went to coach the baseball team.
Right. We drew a line down the state of Arkansas, and I took the east half, and he took the west half, and that's how we recruited that first year. And you talk about going to a lot of schools. But getting back to your earlier question, as a recruiter, my job was to go out and make a connection with that high school athlete, find out about their academics and their academic interests, and try to develop a relationship with them, away from Arkansas Tech. But Coach Mullins would evaluate every ball player on film painstakingly. He watched more film than anybody you can imagine. And I heard him say it the other day, and he's human. He made some mistakes and he made some great successes. It's a very inexact science, but I didn't make any decisions on the recruitment of athletes. He would ask my input about offensive skill players. He wouldn't ask about offensive linemen because obviously that was his forte.
Yeah.
Well, and in doing that, you know, what were some attributes you looked for in a player? As you know, because I know you said you know, with D2, it wasn't just you know, you wasn't just looking for a guy that you could fit into, like we're talking about, like someone like Arkansas or Alabama. You know, they're just looking for the next puzzle piece to put into that puzzle that is their style and their, you know, whatever offense they run. For you, you're looking for the best athlete you can get.
Yes.
But you still want them to fit in well with what you're doing if you can, but that's not quite as important. But what are some things that you look like you would like, say, if there's any kids out there listening to this, you know, what are some things you look for in a student when you're recruiting them that says that could be a good player besides just what's on tape?
Well, let me put it to you this way, and there are exceptions. The first, being realistic, first thing you're going to look at is, wow, that kid can play.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, he's an athlete, or he fits what I'm looking for. But after you get past that initial, it enters into your mind. Because I'll tell you what, as a coach, you're going to get a phone call at 2 o'clock in the morning, and you're going to say, Clint Clark did what? You're looking for character, okay? You don't want to bring somebody in that's going to keep you up at night. Yeah. And you don't want to bring somebody in that's going to embarrass you or the university or the program. And I don't think a lot of high school students get that. I really don't, because, you know, there's evaluations all the way up to the NFL. I mean, they're evaluated now. Again, there are exceptions, you know, and I think we've all seen those recently. But you're looking for a kid that really wants to take the opportunity. This whole Division I paying players things, I couldn't be more against anything in my life, because I have said from the start, it's not a right to play college football. It's a privilege. And, you know, and every kid I ever recruited, I use those exact words, and I looked them in the eye and made sure they understand me. You know, you may be gifted, you may be the most wonderful player in the world, but you don't have the right to play anything. You know, this is an honor, you know. So I think that's what you look for, especially at Division II. I think you look for kids that are either going to be or have the potential to be high character kids.
Well, you know, and I can only speak for myself. You know, when I played 4 years at Tech, I'm very proud to say that I was the slowest player on the football team.
I don't know about that.
No, it's true. I'm proud of it. Hey, let's just be honest. If I stole this joke and I've worn it out, but I'm going to tell it to you. If I was racing a pregnant woman, I'd come in third. If she was carrying twins, I'd get fourth. Wouldn't even get a medal, coach. So I stole that from Mark Grace on the Jim Williams show, but I added the twins part on. That's a Clint Clark original.
That's a Clint Clark. That's good.
Made it my own. But no, what I want to say is for me, it meant the world to me to wear that uniform. Like, it really did. To go out there, you know, and I didn't get the glory of a lot of playing time, and that's fine. I've grown to appreciate my career for what my career was. And the privilege to go out there and run through the tee. And I always loved our Friday walkthrough practices, where it was just Moses was off doing his own thing, and you just had the offense, and you were able to command it. You came up, you'd always give us the speech, and then I'd get to say the offense on three, and I'd turn on my Southern accent so high. I think you enjoyed it deep down. So,
oh yeah,
it was a lot of fun playing for you, Coach. I had a great time, and I can't thank you enough for coming on here and for everything you've done.
Guys, I've enjoyed it, and I wish you all the success in the world. And, you know, Travis, it's good to meet you. And I know if you've stuck with this guy through all the years, You're the high character guy that I'm talking about.
There's something
But,
just
you know,
way
Clint,
wrong
I'm proud of all the things you're doing. No, I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all. You're all doing great things, and I appreciate the opportunity to visit with you.
Well, Coach, thank you for joining us, and it was definitely an interesting and enjoyable conversation, and we'll look forward to hearing more from you in the future. And you know, once again, I know Clint was excited to have you. I know he thinks a ton of you, and thanks for sharing your story with us, and having a good time with us today, folks. Thank y'all for listening and watching, whether you're on YouTube or Spotify or Apple or Amazon or TuneIn Radio.
Talking Travis on Farmers Only, whatever.
Yeah, wherever you're at.
You know who you are.
My DMs are wide open. So
wide open.
Anyway, seriously, thank y'all for listening. That's why we do this. Thank you for the feedback. Y'all are folks that let us know that you enjoy the show. In case you didn't, we snuck in an extra podcast last week. And if nothing else, you need to hear it to hear Clint's Cheesecake Factory story.
Yeah, I'm still spicy to Cheesecake Factory.
And
all I'm saying is, if you buy cheesecake at the Cheesecake Factory, you'd be able to eat the cheesecake in the lobby.
That's right. So Cheesecake Factory, you're on notice.
Yeah.
And also too, last week we interviewed Coach Gary Crowder, former basketball coach at OBU, and he told us about the best prank I've ever heard of, Coach. They pranked the state papers for 4 years, made up a high school football team.
And they would call in the scores every week, and they posted it.
Stay on here. We'll tell you a little more about it.
It was brilliant.
When I end the show, stay on here. We'll tell you a little more.
All right.
So you might be interested in it. Anyway, thank y'all so much. Go back and listen to some of the old podcasts. If you're listening to this one, you haven't listened to the Steve Mullins podcast, go listen to it. It was a wonderful conversation too. And it'll connect these two together a little more, especially those of y'all connected with Arkansas Tech and that played for this guy or with Clint. And so we appreciate that. Coach Riccono, thank you so much.
Thank you, Travis.
We are out. Have a great week.
Sweat, work, filthy, dirt, harvest, hurt, kingdom come. Sweat, work, filthy, dirt, harvest, hurt, kingdom come. Listen, that's why I sweat when I work. My hands get filthy down in this dirt. Won't see no harvest till I hurt. Crying your kingdom come. Listen, I wake up in the morning, I bow my head to pray. Mama told me if I don't, ain't nothing gonna change. These prayers breaking up hard drive so I can sow the seed. Ain't afraid of no